Welcome to 5 Minutes for Good, a place for leading voices to share initiatives that go beyond the commercial. In this second series, we're focusing on travel in Asia. We'll hear the flip side and discover what the travel industry is doing for good in that region. Following a short intro, guests will be given their 5 minutes for good, firing up the engines, inspiring action, and making us think that was 5 minutes well spent.
5
minutes for good. Welcome, Tom Hall, to your 5 minutes for good. Thanks for joining this series of the podcast. But before we begin to get into your 5 minutes, tell those who don't know you a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks for having me, Phil. My name's Tom Hall. I work for Lonely Planet in a variety of different guises. My official job title is that I'm a vice president, which is very American sounding. That means that I essentially work across our communications, editorial, and brand. We're quite a small team, so we all do lots of different things at Lonely Planet. I also have a speciality when it comes to writing, which is that I cover all of our train content, primarily in Europe, but also across the world. So we have books on amazing train journeys, train travel in Europe. We have extensive digital output about hopping on a train anywhere we go. It's one of the most popular things that we publish on. And I look after a lot of that.
That's fabulous. I love a good train journey myself. So, this brings us to the moment, Tom, where I say to you, this is your 5 minutes for good. Over to you.
Okay, so my 5 minutes for good, probably not a surprise based on what I've just said, is to wherever you possibly can, take the train. There's all kinds of reasons why I'd like you to do that. The first one is clearly there's an environmental benefit to doing that versus other forms of travel. I'm not an environmental scientist, so I won't go into that too much, but I think the case is quite clearly proven. But I'd also like to consider what I would say are maybe the more ephemeral benefits for being on a train versus being in a plane or in a car. Taking the train is a relaxing form of transport. If you get it right. I am sure there's people who are listening to this and thinking, "Oh, my commute is not very relaxing." But I'm thinking more about the train as a substitute for a journey you might take or as part of the experience itself when you go traveling. There are train journeys all over the world that are deeply beautiful. They're additive to your experience of traveling, whether you're, sitting on a small train trundling through the mountains in Japan, whether you're on a Eurostar, just going from London to Paris, or whether you're hopping on a sleeper train somewhere and having that almost sort of time warp experience of going to sleep in one place and waking up somewhere that's completely different. And this is one of the few ways that you can do that. So my suggestion would be take the train, look into it. There's all kinds of wonderful journeys that you can take. I think it can be a brilliant part of pretty much any journey in the world.
I think it's fabulous. I mean, I remember my very first experience of doing an overnight sleeper to Edinburgh. And when you're talking about you go to bed at one end, well, you're obviously awake at one end, and then you go to bed, and then you wake up in Edinburgh, and the magic in between. It's just a fabulous experience. Tell me, when you've traveled around the world and you've taken your train journeys, if there was one train journey that you could take that was the most magical, what would that be?
Well, firstly, we're very fortunate in that in the UK, I think we've probably got the best train journey in the world, which is the sleeper train, the Highland train from London Euston to Fort William. And it's wonderful because you get on this train at Euston, busy London evening, and you sort of melt into Scotland. You drift off to sleep. Maybe you can have a trip to the lounge car. It's a train with a lounge car. It's got lovely safety and things like that. And you wake up in the morning as your train is just going through this amazing remote Northwest Highland scenery, and ending up in the heart of the Northwest Highlands. So that's a wonderful journey. For me, I think that I would go to Switzerland and I would take pretty much any of the scenic trains. But there is a train which goes from Montreux on the shores of Lake Geneva. It goes all the way through to Spitz now via a gauge change, and it's just this stunning alpine journey, a scenic Swiss train, and you can do it if you get a 1-day Swiss rail pass for no additional cost. And even though that in itself is not a cheap ticket, it is good value in the context of traveling in somewhere that's relatively expensive like Switzerland. So that would be my suggestion.
And on that one, I'm familiar visually with it. I've not been on it, but what time of year?
Well, you can do it at any time of year. I think that the best views would be in early summer or early autumn. Clearly, if you go in winter, it's going to look completely different. But I, like a lot of people, grew up with sort of Heidi on television, and I'm a bit of a sucker for the sort of summer alpine, beautiful wildflowers, green meadows, maybe Sound of Music kind of scenery, though I've never seen the Sound of Music, so I'm making an assumption that that's in that.
Brilliant. So in terms of, we can come to you for these tickets, presumably.
So Lonely Planet itself does not actually sell train tickets. And what we do is we give people the information whereby they can find them themselves. Actually, trainline.com is a great place to go shopping for train tickets in Europe. And it makes the whole experience very, very easy and straightforward.
Yeah, amazing. Oh, well, I love that. Train travel is, I think perhaps it's a bit underrated because we've become so used to the car, haven't we? And plane, obviously. And, it's a natural go-to. And, but I agree. I mean, it's what a beautiful journey that is. And especially if you get the restaurant car, and that's a fabulous place to spend your time. Well, well, Tom, that was simply, breathtaking. I was in that journey with you, and I could see myself being there on the train right now. But now, before we close, it's time to drop your guard and go a little off-piste. And this is where I ask you, if there was one thing you could do for 5 minutes that isn't necessarily for good, what might that be?
I'm going to slow down even further. I have a wonderful job and I love working in travel, but it does mean that a lot of my journeys are very planned and I'm normally on quite a tight schedule. And I would love to recreate Patrick Leigh Fermor, the travel writer's walk that he took as a younger man from Hook of Holland to what was Constantinople, what is now Istanbul. And he just walked the whole way doing his journey. And it would be a way of sort of just saying, well, forget everything. I'm going to go and do that. And when I have daydreams, I just think maybe I'll just go for a walk and finish in Istanbul, which I love deeply as a city. So that would be what I do.
Could you tell me the name of the author again?
Yeah, it's Patrick Leigh Fermor. And if anybody wants to read the first volume of the book, it's called A Time of Gifts. The second one is called Between the Woods and the Water. And the third one is called The Iron Road. I think it's called The Iron Road. I need to double check them. Didn't publish the third one until after his death. But they're wonderfully written. They're beautiful books. And they're a portrait of...
Sorry, when are they set?
Yeah, they're set in the 1930s. So there is this backdrop as he walks across Europe of this sort of countdown to the Second World War, and this sense of his own, I guess, loss of innocence as he does this walk, and indeed a portrait of a continent that just really ceased to exist for a variety of reasons during and after the Second World War.
Yeah, I love reading books from that era and before. It really does just paint a different world, doesn't it?
It really does. And we had an amazing writer at Lonely Planet for a long time, who's a woman called Frances Lindsay Gordon, and she wrote books to Ethiopia. She wrote the amazing first edition of Lonely Planet Ethiopia, which is still probably my favourite ever travel guide, if you can have favourites. And she met Patrick Leigh Fermor in his old age before he died. He lived to be 97.
Wow.
And she went and met him. And at the time, I thought, oh, that's interesting. She's gone and met him. Didn't think that much about it. And now I've sort of his books are a constant companion. I'm always rereading them because he wrote about Greece as well. He wrote 2 fabulous books on Greece, and he had a house in Greece, which is this incredible house that he built. And Yeah, he's a fascinating bloke. I mean, he was a bit of a bounder as well,
Yeah.
which like some people tune into that side of his life. That is a bit less interesting for me, but yeah, he's a really, really interesting guy, and that we still have this kind of connection to him. Like 15, 20 years ago, he was still alive. It's an amazing amazing thing.
I think to be somebody who is that multidimensional and slightly different, you have to be a bounder. I think you have to have a sort of a side to your personality which sort of says sod the rest. This is my way. Well, Tom Hall, thank you. That was 5 minutes well spent.
That was 5 minutes well spent.